everybody. Let me know if you're having any issues with my sound. I know sometimes that happens, so just let me know if that happens. So I sent an email to everybody that had information about this meeting and what we plan to do, and then as well as some links to any of the resources that we'll be using as part of them. For some reason, my internet has just decided to not work. So I'm trying to pull it up on my end. So if you'll give me just a minute. I'm rebooting my internet. Okay. I can hear my voice echoing on somebody's from somebody else's audio. I'm just trying to pull up the agenda. Here we go. Okay. All right. So the reason we have two committees here today is so that we can discuss strategies for using the outreach committee as a way of promoting information about COAs and just in general information about being in a historic home and what that means and what the benefits are. Now, we had sent out a document that everyone should have access to and should have a link to, and it's a share document. So anything, if you guys have ideas, even during the meeting, you can type them into that share document and it'll just pop up in everybody else's. And that's why we're using it in that form. But quickly, before we get to that, and I'm going to try to very quickly move through the community outreach stuff just so we can touch on it, because I don't want to waste the time of the other committee that's here, and I want us to get to that point pretty quickly that we can be discussing things with you. So very quickly, on the agenda, we're going to talk about social media metrics and the Preservation Month wrap up. Just a quick overview so that you guys know how it went. It was a great month. We didn't do anything huge for Preservation Month because the previous month we had done the cards, and that had been something that took a lot of our resources and energy and volunteer hours and time. So for Preservation Month, we did something more simple, but we still did acknowledge it and celebrate it on social media. We did basically a Raleigh history quiz. And so we had questions. We'd put up like a picture and of a historic landmark, or like a piece of a historic landmark, or a piece of just some historic place in Raleigh, and have people answer what they know about it, if they know where it is, what it is, and things like that. Basically just to build engagement and to do something unique for the month. It went pretty well. Our total reach for the month was about 27,000, which is great. Again, month to month, our goal is typically to hit around 10,000 reach. So breaking through 10,000 is always good. We got pretty close to 30,000, so that's excellent. We got over 80 new followers this month. Again, that's fantastic. On an average month to month, we probably get 10 to 15 new followers. So getting over 80, and then the month before we got 100 new followers. So we're getting pretty close to 2,000 followers, which is our next big goal for our social media. Our posts were highly engaging. We had way more comments than we normally have. So the quiz format did work pretty well. People seemed to really enjoy it. We got a lot of interaction and engagement and questions and discussion, which was great. It allowed us to interact with our followers more, teach them things, answer questions and things like that. So it was really good. Post engagement showed a sharp increase, which goes to basically just show what I just said to you. Our post engagement this month was about 3,500, which was an increase of almost 4,000%. So basically we had a 4,000% increase in engagement this month. Huge, huge. So that definitely shows that the quiz worked well. It might be something we want to consider for other months. Instagram also had a banner month. We had a lot more engagement than normal on Instagram, which is great. We're starting to give more attention to our Instagram. Our most popular posts I have listed here, they were all quiz related. So we did a quiz. One of them was on Pullen Park, one was on the Heck Andrews house, and one was on the Mordecai house. And there were several other posts, but those are the top ones. Lots of comments. One of them had 44 comments, which was fantastic. Others had 14 and where's the other one? 44 and 12. So we had quite a few comments. Interestingly, I've noticed, and this is across platforms, Facebook, the algorithm has shifted, and I've sent out an email about this, but basically it means reach is harder to get. The Facebook algorithm is no longer being as generous with making sure that we show up in people's feeds. So it used to be if somebody liked one of our posts, then our post was pretty likely to show up in their feed that their friends would see. That's not happening as much anymore. So just in general, every organization with the Facebook is having to deal with this. So our engagement is actually higher than normal, but our reach is lower than normal. And that's why it's the algorithm change. And Instagram, we have 219 followers. We had a post on the Lustron house that had 44 likes, which is a lot compared to what we normally get. So we also did Lustron on Facebook. Lots of interest in that. We may want to talk about the Lustron even more often on our social media. So that's pretty much how Preservation Month went. It did exactly what we wanted. It raised our engagement and let us speak to our followers a little bit more. Going back to the, all right. I now have here, now this is something Erin had put down, so Erin, you may want to speak to it. Other city neighborhood projects RHDC may want to promote. And I see Boylan Heights and Black Main Street. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure, yes. So these are just two things that have been shared with us through other avenues that might be something we'd be interested in sharing on our social media this coming month. So Travis may actually know more about what's going on in Boylan Heights, but they have essentially created an archive committee to try and start collecting information on each one of the properties and be a resource for property owners to come with the history of their house, get historic photos, figure out what's been done. And they asked that we would share that information to help spread the word. They've created a survey that they're trying to send out to get responses from current and previous homeowners and anybody else that can help them build their database. So that might be worth sharing.
I was going to say, to be clear, they didn't ask. I saw it in their newsletter or on their list and said, hey, do you want us to? Because there might be people who have moved and they were open to it. I didn't want to put words in their mouth.
Good point. Very good point. But it all blurs together for me. And the other thing that we found was something called, I think it's Art Beats, which is I think it's a grant program through the city to incentivize public art projects. And in the spring group of projects is a series of art installations along East Hargett Street, highlighting the history of Black Main Street in Raleigh. And I think that would be great to share as well. And there's some photos and the links that we sent out in the email, but it's essentially, they took a historic marker style that you would see as a highway marker program and painted it onto the sidewalk in 4 key areas associated with historic buildings or businesses. So that's a really cool project as well.
Thank you. Yes. By the way, on that note, if anybody ever sees something like this, a project that's historic, history related, that you think would be great for social, yeah, please bring it to the meeting. Erin, that's awesome. That's going to do really well on social, and it allows us to kind of, team up with them a little bit. And anytime we can, collaborate with the community and help promote something they're doing, and this is really cool. Thank you. I love it. Yeah, I think we definitely will. I'm going to go down there and do, I might even do a live stream for social for RHDC and kind of show some of these places and talk about them. I think that's a cool idea.
You could read the signs off the ground.
Literally, like I could just read the signs and that would be enough, and then tell people to come down there and take a look. Thank you. That's awesome. I'm gonna keep that link. I'm looking at it now. If those of you who are looking at the link, it's really neat. I've been thinking that Hargett Street would be a really cool place to highlight the history, but I didn't know enough about all of the historic places there. So this is perfect. Cool. All right. Well, on that note, if there's nothing else, I think we can move forward to kind of the bulk of what this meeting is going to be about, and that's homeowner outreach and methods. So that is why we have the other committee here, because during our meeting, we came up with a list of ideas that I sent out. I'm going to look for it myself. Here we go. Yes, I see everyone's in here. Good. So we have suggested ideas, but there's so many routes that we could go. We wanted to maybe have a better understanding of what's been done before, what has worked, and also what you guys with your expertise think the specific needs are and what would best meet those needs. So you all have the document in front of you. We could just open it up for discussion. Okay.
Okay, well, let me jump in. You knew I wouldn't wait long. I think for those of you that are not on the COA, maybe a little bit of an explanation. From where we sit, we have people come in seeking approval for their project, and they will frequently bring in photographs of other properties in the neighborhood that are examples of what they want to do and reasons why they think we should approve it. And then we find out or figure out with staff's help that those things were done without any approval, which leaves us with the question of how should we utilize that for with regard to the people trying to do things the right way. And then beyond that, what should we do enforcement wise for people who did those things and maybe they knew better and maybe they didn't. So we're thinking that we are needing to find tools that will get the word out in a rapid, and with homeownership turning over and lots of new people moving and leaving, we need to find efficient ways to get information to new neighborhood residents or new occupants of a landmark about the process, how it works, and what you got to do, and why it's a bad thing to not to make the effort to work within the system. So now, I'm going to hand the ball to Tanya to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we've done in the past.
And if Erin's comfortable with it, I put all that in a document and extricated it from my head. But if I'm putting you on the spot, I'll just start talking.
I'll need to go dig up that document.
Okay, I'll start talking. I'm trying not to be the one talking all the time. So we've done a number of different things over the years. Nothing is perfect. One of the biggest things that we've done is is the tri-annual newsletter that has lapsed during the discussion about whether or not we were going to put it on paper or we were going to do something online. And the last thing we did, mailing we did, was a postcard in 2018. And mailing things, I think having a combination is good. We of course send out, gov delivery. Sorry, that's the city's email blast, but that people have to opt in to that system. But sending out, whether it's in a newsletter or a postcard or something actually to people where they are, can't guarantee they're going to look at the stuff, but that is one way that we have ensured that people are, know they're in a district. Other things we've done, we have participated in neighborhood meetings before, Boylan Heights and Oakwood. When Glenwood Brooklyn was first started, we went to a neighborhood cookout celebration, street party thing, did that with Prince Hall as well. And the brown street signs are only in the historic overlay district, not, that's a very subtle thing. They may not know what it means. I have spoken to a couple different realty firms on that, on the topic, and we, anyone who emails, we share information with. I don't know, am I missing anything, Aaron?
Well, we've tried to work through the Society for Preservation of Historic Oakwood and a similar group in Boylan Heights.
Right.
Because for us to start from ground zero, trying to know who is in every property is a challenge. And if we can get a running start some other way, we're probably ahead of the game.
Yeah, the challenge for us in, when properties change hands is there is no easy way, no mechanized way for us to know when properties change hands. Which is why we rely on the neighborhood, which is why we always talk about this being, it's a partnership between the city and RHDC and the neighborhoods. We all work together.
Yes. We made a list here of thoughts, and some of them are like really simple, like just changes we could make immediately. But we don't know if they value, or if you think they really wouldn't reach, they want to reach. So some of the simpler things we could do just to like start, right? That would be very fast. Would be just starting to make social media posts that are information about this kind of stuff. Now, we would really need your guys' help in understanding like what kind of posts to make, but we could just include this kind of education in our posting. Right now, we really post about historic buildings and the history behind them and pictures of historic buildings, engaging things that are educating people in history overall. Don't really touch on any of that. So that's one thing we could do. Again, it'd be fast, but I don't know if it would people. Another thing we discussed that would be pretty quick would be to create a Facebook group. Now, this might be a good way just for RHDC's overall reach. If we created a group and we would, name it something like Raleigh Historic Home or something, that way people us. But we weren't sure if there would be any, public information and things like that. So that was a thought. And then a digital, which would be quick and easy. We could just make a newsletter that goes out every 3 months. But one of the concerns, kind of like you said, where do we get that list of names of who should get this newsletter?
Oh, well, it's easy to get the names of who gets the newsletter. We just, digital, back up. We can send a newsletter, and there are funds in your budget to send a paper newsletter to everybody, tenants and property owners. We can get that information easy. What we cannot get easily are the, email addresses, and whatnot. And so that is an opt-in. They have to choose to be on Facebook. They have to choose to be on Twitter or Instagram or wherever you do that. So I think there's two ways to thinking about this. One is, the regulatory piece, which is, you homeowner, please remember, you have to do this. This step, get the certificate of appropriateness. And then there's the, here are all the historic districts and, here are the buildings. And oh, by the way, in Boylan Heights, you also do this. But I'm going to stop talking and let the COA committee talk.
Well, Janine, why don't you take a turn?
I was going to mention a few things. One, that I appreciate, Nick, your comments from the beginning here, because I do think I definitely recognize us on the COA commission probably have an agenda that might be parallel, but maybe also a little different, Heather, than kind of where your list has kind of come from. And I think you did talk about a number of things, Nick, that I think it's partly just educating people on the process of and requirements involved with living in their properties in the district. And I'm glad, I don't know who this guest editor was, but I saw on this list here, someone typing things about real estate agents, because I've always been, and that was one of the notes I made to bring up, I've always been really curious, wouldn't that be an incredible way, a starting point, so somebody moving in is already getting at least familiar, get the understanding. I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say it seems as though some people have no idea that they're going to be required to go through this process when they've bought their properties in a historic district. So that I'm really curious about what that might look like as far as trying to get something in place or information passed along during the closing or when a home is on the market.
I guess we have to think about the motivations. The realtors want to get a sale. Their incentive is to minimize the hassle or potential hassle because you've moved in to this neighborhood. On the other hand, realtors love to brag about how they just made a sale, and if we could piggyback that some way, maybe they would be more useful to us. Another, I do think that coming from COA side of things, we're sort of thinking about the thou shalt not and thou shall, the regulatory side of things. There may be a way to tout successful projects where it looked like crap when it went to the DRAC and it got better, and then it got still better after they went through a session with the COA committee. And at one we had, and maybe we still do, an appearance commission in Raleigh that would talk about. At one point, 20 years ago, they used to talk about bad jobs, and I guess that they got away from that and went to talking only about nice pieces of work. But But the general idea is if we could show people in these neighborhoods or landmarks how well something worked and that it turned out to be a positive and not a negative, even though it took a little longer, the project actually got a lot better. So I don't know. What do y'all think, John?
I want to piggyback right onto that because it's exactly what I was going to bring up. And I think this is an ideal setup for Instagram. And let me throw something out just to throw it out. I had this marketing guy that helped me with the Instagram page for the store. And he said, John, the first, because Instagram's set up on those 9 squares. And he says, the first column is going to be about the store. The second column is going to be about businesses that you think that people should, that you like and you want to support and kind of throw up there. And then the third column is going to be about architecture and design. And so every time you post, whatever column you're in, that's what you're going to discuss. And so to piggyback on what Nick is talking about here, one of those columns can be about successful projects in the Instagram page. And it's like this time we're going to talk about, here's an Instagram situation where so-and-so did, and they're all cases that are settled and are done, but they're a great way to kind of talk about the success of this is what they got, and the issue that they got tax credits for this, and look how much money they saved overall, and kind of promote the whole thing about the benefits of what they got out of the experience, even if and then try to tag that person so that they can post it themselves on their own little Instagram page saying, I got a thing on RHDC and blah 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 blah. I just think that there's a way to kind of bring that in, and to go back to the realtor issue. Realtors are required. I know it's not. I know since we're a quasi judicial body and we can say there shall for and all that good stuff. Can we not do that with the realtors? I mean, they have to disclose all kinds of information when they sell a house in terms of whether it's haunted.
It's already a legal requirement that they tell people that they're in a historic district.
But they don't do it.
Well, just because they tell them doesn't necessarily mean they understand what that means. That's the key.
Well, because that's true. Okay, that is true, and that's where I think 90% of our issues come into play, because the complaints that I have heard since I've been on the board are all about new neighbors moving in and going, wait a minute, I didn't know, and wait a minute, I'm going to put a fence in. Does that count? And so there's a lot of questions as to what can I do? What can I do? And I think that that's another kind of way to engage the public, Heather, is if there's some way to kind of create a frequently asked question. Does my fence have to be 42 inches? Something like that kind of brings the questions up that most people ask. And so you can go to social media somewhere to kind of look at the kind of general things like, oh, maybe I need to check this out. Maybe I need to, because I've got a fence and I'm going to move mine. And, because even in the process of being in the COA committee, when we went through this fence project over on the other side of Glenwood, I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, I've got a 6-foot fence. Do I have to take my fence down now? That I didn't even know, and I'm on the committee. So it's one of these things about how do we begin to ask. I think so much about the social media thing can be about asking the questions that everybody else is asking, and we put them out there and say, are you thinking about a new fence? Or something. I keep using that one, but that's the only one I can kind of think of to kind of get the ball rolling. But engaging the structured way so that there is almost a scheduled kind of post for what's going on in COA in all the social media outlets, so that people know that, oh, it's going to keep coming, and that there's some structure to that, and then also just really pressuring the realtors, whether that's someone from our committee, and even if we have a section of the committee that does nothing but reach out to engagement for those people, because you can't dump that on community awareness to go out and talk to every single realtor that's out there, nor that we can make staff do that all the time, but somebody's got to, I think. Janine.
Could I comment? I like that. I want to also say too, maybe this is an opportunity for some social media that sort of takes COA and gives it a positive spin. Like, I think a lot of times maybe it's seen as like, the historical preservation police who just, shut everything down, or at least probably those are the projects people probably hear about, the ones that aren't really positive, right? And maybe it doesn't need to be about like some unbelievable renovation or addition, but it can just be like, hey guys, look at all these great things that are happening in Boylan Heights these days, and just showcasing lightly projects, just like a volume of them that just shows things are happening, homeowners are getting improvements made. That's a good thing.
The reason I put it in there is they should know. It's a they should know the information, and whether they're required to disclose it or don't disclose it. I think also there's some clients that may want to live in a historic district or may at least want to be told about it. And, they don't get, I don't think we've ever been to a real estate company that has like 60 realtors active, they take donuts or whatever we do these days, and brief them on it. I think it would be good, for them to at least be aware they have an obligation. They may not even be aware of that, may be buried back in the course they took 6 years ago, and they just don't do it.
If I could ask a quick question about, I love this idea of using social media and Instagram, for example, to highlight, successful projects, case studies, like John was saying, or even just highlight, lightly things that are happening, like in Boylan Heights, like Janine was saying. My question is, so in outreach, I don't know anything about any of these. Where would you guys be able to send us what you guys know about, or would you need us to like research these types of things? Where would we get those types of posts?
Would it be somewhere where we could revisit, say, after the appeal process is over? Not that we're going to be sharing any kind of private information per se, but where we could like go back and look a year after and say, oh, remember that month there were a couple great projects, or, just kind of regularly revisit the, halls of all the projects we've seen and kind of thinking through what's been built.
So Tanya, do you and Colette and Aaron, do y'all think that we'd be well to start off with the easy stuff about minor works and fences, trees, sidewalks, and so that people pick up off of some of that, and then maybe with a link so it is easy for them to click on guidelines and see what else? What do you think?
I do think talking about what would need a COA and, some of the things that folks might think of would be the way to go, but not to make sure that you're not getting into a conversation about what would get approved, because that's a super slippery slope. And that if you get questions like that, you just have to zip it and send them to staff, and we can guide them. We do have, the other thing is when there are two kinds of historic overlay districts, which I know the COA committee knows, but for the others, there is the historic overlay district general, which is all of them except for Glenwood, Brooklyn, which is what's called street side historic overlay district. The guidelines are the same, the rules are the same, only in Glenwood, Brooklyn, not the entire property is subject to getting it. So I think we'd have to find some way to just be careful without it getting super jargony, differentiate or, add a caveat. If you're in Glenwood, Brooklyn, you might not need to, or, you can wordsmith it that way. We'll just want to be careful of that. But I do think a broad overview. Something else that we had, well, this was more about filling out the application, but several years ago, the city had a bunch of how-to videos on, how to get a permit for a pool or how to do this sort of rehab thing. And there was a how-to COA. I was out there, yay, on camera there for a while. But then, processes changed, things changed, and it became out of date, and now it's gone away. So, if that is something that you think would be useful, we could, float it up the food chain.
The other way to do it, Tanya, I understand about the slippery slope, but maybe if we talk about past something that was 60, 90 days ago, fairly recent, but over with, where it was a minor work and it was approved, well, then it's just essentially a piece of news that We
Mhm.
got an application, and so we talk about what we did,
Yeah,
not what we might do in the future, but what we did do, and that folks can pick up on that, you know, if you've got a project in mind, here's a good place to start looking to think about it.
yeah. Did you know you needed to get a blah for a fence? Look, here's an example.
Carolyn? You're muted.
Okay, I was just gonna say, all those good contacts that Heather was mentioning at the beginning are people that are clearly interested in some type of history, maybe just the story, but try to figure out how to go through that door a little bit, highlighting successes, not in a way to bring in some controversy, but just to say, somehow to let people know. I mean, all of that reach would be a good way to start some very simple positive messages about what a asset to the city, or, I mean, with all that interest in the Heck Andrews House, they had to go through a lot of stuff, but you see the interest it has. So I'm just saying, finding some of these places that are really seen as, treasures, and just somehow linking it to those 27,000 people, or the 27,000 reach that came through the cards, came through the quiz, so that you're sort of going in a back door that doesn't become real regulatory, but more shows the results of following the regulatory and the asset as that's developed as a result.
I just wanted to jump in. I'm not quite sure we're answering Heather's question though, in terms of how we get information to her to be able to disseminate. I think that one of the things we're kind of really focusing on here, and I think that Nick kind of got at it a little bit, is I love the idea of starting small. I also think that the idea of turning those kinds of like staff staff reviewed that doesn't go to the full hearing, it's almost like those would fit wonderful into a question or frequently asked questions section of the social media. So, it's one of these things to where, oh, let me see if there's a question in here about a fence, or something like that. But it's a question that was brought forward that staff was able to solve very quickly. Where I think what Heather is asking for, and I'm still trying to ponder how to do that, is how do we translate what we're doing in COA into a nice little social media message that she can then post and do what she needs to do with. I think that's the difficulty here.
So on your minor works, when y'all do one, is there some text that you produce already anyways to remind yourself of what y'all okayed on that particular property? I'm just thinking about ready-made content that could be stuck into whatever form of social media, like news from the district or whatever. Here's somebody has done something. And if they went through the process on the little stuff, then it's sort of, I would hope the light goes on that if you did anything bigger than that, then of course you're going to have more involvement. But what do y'all do when you get the application and you just check the box says approved and that sort of that?
Not remotely. Aaron, go for it.
So the application process is the same through the permit portal, and they hopefully provide all the documents that are needed to consider it a complete application and be able to approve it. That rarely happens. It's mostly just with our frequent flyers that they know what we're looking for and what's required. So we email them back with the list of things we need for a completed application. And whenever they get that to us, we can review and let them know if it's approved, or would they be willing to change this particular thing to remain a minor work. And if not, we convert it to a major work and it comes to you all. So,
But when you get to the part I'm trying to home in on is the part where it gets approved after whatever back and forth. Is there a ready-made sentence say, or something saying that on thus and such Polk Street, whatever, that offense was approved this month or something like
No,
that?
nope, all it is, we've got it's in the database and it's online, but the address and then the blue placard. So there's not a sentence. The address in one place, the date's in another place, and then there's, words, 42-inch fence. And that's all it'll say. So we don't create, a verbiage sentence. It looks just like the description of work that you see for the major works.
mhm.
Yeah, okay.
And
Long
they're
as
all uploaded, scanned in and uploaded to the city's website. The minor works are, so the full application, all the materials they gave us, sometimes email transactions if they've given us something that we needed in writing via email instead of in attached applications, and then a scan of the placard, that all gets up together. So if somebody really wanted to sleuth, they could go look at other applications for fences and see what got approved, but they would have to do a lot of clicking to know.
That's where I was headed with this, because it requires some research and a little bit of tact in terms of how you type all that stuff out to make it a succinct little story. Is that something that, I hate to bring this up, but do we need more people on the board to focus and be part of that community awareness committee that do nothing but that, to then prep it to get it into the hands of Heather that then runs with the ball, but that there's somebody in the community awareness meeting that is the liaison between what's decided and then what gets put out. And us on the COA committee are making those decisions. Staff is running interference and doing the whole, operations process. But there's someone on the community awareness committee that then comes and goes, okay, what'd you guys do in COA a few months ago? And let me do a little research back with staff to write something up that I can then give to Heather, who then has to distribute it all. Does that make sense?
What about this idea? What if, is there a way for staff to just flag one and say this one might work for our outreach effort, and just forward that file name or whatever to folks on community awareness, say this one could be good for social media, and then the committee knows where to look quickly and get to the bottom of it? Because it's going to fail unless we make it pretty easy for all of us.
Yeah. Can I ask if one of those were sent to me? Because that would work. Like if you just sent me a file, as long as it's not 80 pages long, if I can look at it and quickly disseminate what the story is here. Is there a photo that comes with it? Because a photo is going to be a pretty key part of the post.
There may not be photos, but there will be drawings.
That's fine too. As long
Yeah, there won't be an after. Now here's the trick, that just because they got a COA doesn't mean they actually built it. So it depends on if you're wanting.
Well, but I don't mean to interrupt. I don't mean to interrupt, Tanya, but I think that the point of all of this is not necessarily to say that if they didn't necessarily build it, okay. The point was that it got approved, and this is the success. And I think that even by posting it encourages them. Oh, I guess I need to follow through with that. It's been posted. It's been out there. I've been outed in some regard.
when we did newsletters, I'm assuming that some of this information was in the newsletters. How did we do it then? Who wrote them and how did they get that information?
We didn't talk a lot about the cases.
Okay, so
prior
when someone
in
did
the
a
newsletters. We would highlight maybe a big project or two, but the newsletters were about all of the things that RHDC was doing, and then would include a little bit about the about what's going on. All of the newsletters are on your website, so in PDF. You're welcome to go check them out.
real quick, for the purpose of, I agree that I think we need to start as simple as possible, and then we can like build to the moon if we want. But I think we start simple and build a process. The reason we were having this meeting was we heard that basically members of the community were saying they were complaining. They didn't feel like they had been given enough information on how this stuff worked. And so I think the first thing we wanted to do this for is to address that they basically, there's people out there in the community that feel like they're not being educated on how this stuff works. So I wonder, I love the idea of case studies, and maybe we can do try to do one a month to start with and just see how that goes. But I'm curious if maybe what we should do first is just take what would have been and put it on social media, and maybe also just do a newsletter, do the newsletter. I mean, do you feel the newsletter has value, or did that just not matter? I guess I want to know that first. Did the newsletter have value for the COA? Whitney?
I mean,
I haven't been here long enough to have
Yeah.
a newsletter, so I couldn't really say. But I'm not quite sure that those folks who come to COA are they're focused on their little problem. And I think that where we're coming from is you're right. You're still right on target, Heather. It's the little issues, that I think really matter to everybody, not the big grandiose project, because that's not them. And I think we need to really understand our audience versus just talking above their heads and really engage with them at the level they want to be. And I think even if it's just nothing more than right now, starting with a frequently asked questions section that poses a question a day. Like, I have a 42-inch fence. Do I have to go through a RHDC meeting to get my fence approved? And we answer the question,
Yeah, and the answer is maybe.
Yeah.
Because no, and as long as it meets the guidelines, but if what you want to do is a horizontal fence, then no, staff isn't going to approve it.
Right.
So we've got the COA list of work of what typically goes to the committee and what goes to RHDC. I mean, y'all, staff, sorry, I said the same thing twice.
Yeah, and we got what Aaron sent out just then. We've got this primer for property owners. And we have, I guess, what is a little bit out of date COA talking points piece. And those things can be linked to, we can put any story we want, and we can link to those things that are ready made. But we would have to update the COA talking points, I guess. Is that right, Aaron?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even know that talking points existed until I was looking to see what else we had done. It was done in 2006, right before the city started charging fees for the COAs. So I think that's actually a good thing to look at, because they were very thorough. I didn't look through it very carefully.
All right. Well, then we could probably dredge that up, and maybe COA committee ought to look at that and see what we think of it.
I'd love to see it.
And then we can see what needs to be updated on it, other than the fees. Presumably there's some differences if it's 15 years old, but that might be a good place to start. And
Yes.
And then if we can find a few, or every month or so, find some amount of work that is typical and just make a reference past tense to a COA recently issued for a minor work, then there's no slippery slope, and people can go dig in if they really want more detail about that project. But otherwise, we planted the seed that there are things here you need to be aware of.
So moving forward, if we could have like basically here's what we are gonna do. If we could, I agree with you, I think have the COA committee look at and update the frequently asked questions, and then we can update that on the website. Then I can use that list to make posts all day long. I can ask a question from the FAQ and just put it on our Facebook and be like, did you know blah? And make it a Facebook. So if we have an updated FAQ, I can use that for posts. And then we could also have one time a month, I'll highlight some sort of, COA situation, something that, like a case study. So we'll have one of those a month, as well as me sort of promoting the FAQs and talking about them. I also wonder if we have a list of FAQs, is there some way we could make that into a document and give it to the real estate agencies around the area? You know what I mean? Like email it to them, and then they can print it off and give it to people that are buying historic homes. That might be something that'd be an easy way to start reaching out to and talking to real estate agencies. And they have something directly from us that they can just hand to people who are getting a historic.
Yeah, and we probably better copyright it so that they don't change it on us.
Right.
And not because of the legalisms, but because those people will change your documents in a heartbeat. And then they will attribute it to us. And so we got to be careful, I think.
Oh, gee. Well, we can.
So, it's okay. It's not that hard to put a little C on there to indicate you're claiming that you're claiming some rights in this material.
And that could be sort of a secondary thing. Like we could start with the website and social media because that's pretty easy. Right. And then we could maybe secondarily start taking some of this content that we're creating and giving it to real estate agents, kind of growing from this.
Yeah, it's always good to have a lawyer in the group to kind of make sure.
The problem with lawyers is we've seen so many ways a person can fail that we sometimes are drag on the process. But I'm just thinking about how I've had prior experiences with people taking a document and screwing it up, and we don't want that to occur. So, is that enough for now, or what do y'all think?
If I could just say, I think what would help me the most, as I think probably I'll be doing a lot of these posts, so I can kind of imagine what I would love to have. The FAQs updated from the COA committee. We also had talked about the benefits of a historic home. Maybe you guys could help us create a list of just benefits. That's something else I could make posts. So if I have a list of FAQs and a list of benefits, then I can pull from that to make posts all day long. So that would be helpful.
Heather, I will volunteer to create a little list of benefits of a historic home. I mean, because it goes into sustainability, it goes into value of landfill, it goes into construction in terms of it being solid, all those good things, and preserving memory. And I'll be happy to kind of jot down a few things on that front for you. But
Heather shared a document that we all have access to that has a section for that. So you could just fill right into that document so everybody can see the brain dump.
Which one is it?
It's the suggestions for COA awareness.
Oh, yeah. No, at first I couldn't figure out how to type into it, but now I did. So now I will. I'll add it to that. That's perfect.
And then I can just make posts along with FAQ.
Well, I also want to say, Heather, I think you've got your finger on the pulse exactly of what that FAQ thing that you just mentioned, and in terms of your plan of action for this, I think is ideal. I think it's a really great way to start. And I love the idea of creating something that would go to the realtors that we've created, that they've got in their hand, versus just going out and just yelling at them for not doing what they should be doing. I think that's fantastic. That's great. Thank you.
I'm trying to beat up on the realtors, but I think Tanya was right that the realtors probably do tell them, but at the time people just think, I know it's a historic neighborhood. I like it. It's quaint, it's cute, and all that, and they don't get the rest of the story, or they don't focus because they're busy trying to decide, are we going to get a new washer or stick with the one we have?
So
go ahead, Tanya.
Aaron, you do it.
I was just gonna say, what we need to figure out now is what our next steps are gonna be for the next meeting. Particularly something we'll need to keep in mind as we figure out what this process looks like, that requires the least amount from everybody here to get it set up and going. Will be that because it's this quasi-judicial process performed by a local commission, that is technically regulatory duties of the board, that the city or the department's communications team is going to need to touch if that goes out on our social media. So one of the steps will be probably a staff review of the post before it goes out to make sure that all the nuances of that approval are there. And then something going through past us up into the communications team.
Let me clarify that. The social media posts don't need to go. Staff, I want us to read it, and you can do things in advance just to make sure that we're not accidentally twisting something. But no, if you want to create this document that you're talking about, that is something that we would need to take through communications and get it vetted from a language standpoint and all the things, and make it official. But as far as getting, but not for the social media posts. And the only thing staff would be doing on those is simply just making sure that it's accurate.
Agreed. Maybe what we could do is, I think COA, if maybe at your next meeting, you guys are able to, or throughout the month, look at the FAQ, update it, and then we've got the benefits of owning a historic home being listed here. That stuff will then go through city as needed. Once it's all completed, if it can come to me, and that way I'll know I have 100% accurate information that I can work from. I'll start using that as posts, and as I create them, I'll send them to Aaron, Tanya, and Colette first to make sure that, because I agree, I want to make sure I don't know what I'm talking about, so I want to make sure it's accurate. And that can be kind of our starting point. So if COA starts by making this stuff, making the lists, then it'll go through the city, it will come to me, and I'll know I have 100% accurate stuff to work from. And then I'll start using that stuff to make posts, and I'll work with, you guys to make sure that it's accurate before putting it on the internet. I think that's a great starting baseline. And then once we start creating all that stuff, we can talk about a document that we send to realtors. We can talk about, another newsletter or whatever we want to. But I think that is a good start, and it allows us to have all that information right at our fingertips.
So do we still put up nominations for a community appearance or something? I'm trying to remember. Seems like we've had times where we tried to remember good projects.
The Sir Walter Awards have I don't know if it's specifically a preservation section or just existing building rehab projects, and we regularly point them toward stuff we can think of from the last year that would be good candidates.
And also for capital area preservations and Enthymia Awards.
So Heather, that's good stuff for social media posts as well. Just publicizing those things to people that might not be monitoring capital area preservation or whatever.
Okay, yeah, where can I find that information? Is it, well, I just look at their website or?
Probably the Sir Walter Awards, that is the design awards that are issued by the Appearance Commission. So that's on the city's website. Then yeah, I would just look at CAP's website and see what they've got.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I love having ideas of things to post.
That was another thing I was going to actually suggest was, Appearance Commission came up with the Sir Walter Raleigh Awards. Why can't we give out an award? Can we?
Well, I'll note that they're already working on next year's stuff. And they cover more than just preservation and more than just building work. And I personally think we nestle pretty well into that awards program, and they kind of do the work for us to feature good projects, and we don't really have to lift a finger besides pointing them to the ones we thought were good.
Yeah, I think we ought to look carefully at what's already being done before we reinvent the wheel. Their production is pretty good and their awards are pretty good, and but on the other hand, almost everybody in Heather's audience doesn't know anything about them.
Right. And I guess where I was coming from on that front was, can we have a conversation with Appearance Commission to see if we can have like a highlighted award that is RHDC specific or something like that. Like in for example, as with the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, for the Triangle section, we have what's called the Gail Lindsay Award, which is specific to projects which were designed around sustainability and specifically spoke to sustainability because that was her thing. I don't know if Appearance Commission would entertain the idea of putting our name on one of them.
I don't know. We start by seeing what they're doing and us refreshing our recollection about that, and see if that is gonna be good enough for what we're doing while we work on this other. But because some of that stuff's pretty good, and the capital area preservation has been pretty good about giving awards to whatever we nominated, I think. Because their problem is since they are not involved with Raleigh projects, they just about have to get them from us.
Yeah, most of their awards annually are in Raleigh.
Yes, Tanya's correct. I'd say for the past few years, a large majority of CAPS awards have been things that have been nominated by you. I'll also add that across the country, it's been kind of regarded as poor practice for the governing body that's reviewing applications to then also issue awards to those applications. So having both CAP and Sir Walter as two opportunities for preservation related awards to be given is pretty good for what we have here. I will also add that in the past, members of the commission have been on the judging committee for Sir Walter Raleigh Awards. Usually when that season starts, we'll hear from the Appearance Commission to, have a designee sent over to start reviewing some of the applications. So there has been involvement in the past. It didn't quite look the same way last year because of COVID, but in normal times, there's a good amount of involvement.
All right. So we'll the COA will try to get over the talking points piece and see what change needs to be made, if any. And so we got some marching orders here for how we can begin to pull this together. Heather's got her notes, and so I think that can work, and we'll actually be a little bit ahead of the game otherwise. So, all right. So Heather, what do you need from us? Are you ready to stop, or it's your committee?
I think we're good. It's 5:08, so we've gone a little bit over, and that's fine. But I think we've got everything down. I think we've kind of all got, as you said, our marching orders of what to do going forward. So I'll just kind of be, for now, waiting to hear back from the COA committee and make sure that I have the information to start probably within the next month or so. This will become part of social media posting, and then we can kind of grow from there. So thank you guys so much for coming to an extra meeting to join us.
Colette, I've been in pain the whole time watching the sun producing stripes across your face. I thought, if she didn't get a migraine, I don't know why. So, all right. Good.
All
I
right.
I will add before we head out, just for UCOA committee members that are still with us. If you have things that you want on paper for the Community Awareness Committee to keep in mind as we work toward this, put it in that document that Heather shared. Their next meeting is July 6th. So I would set that as a personal deadline to do your brainstorming so that we can kind of move the conversation forward beyond this spot next time we get together.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Erin. All right, everyone. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.